Al and I met several times when we were planning Born on the 4th of July, but I didn't think of him for cruising. He was not only a movie star, he was considered one of America's best stage actors. Lorimar, with the backing of United Artists, made him a firm offer of $3 million, a top salary in those days, and he accepted. Pacino arrived filled with enthusiasm, but little knowledge of gay life, let alone the S&M world, and he didn't want to see the locations before filming. He wanted to experience them fresh, as his character would. On the first day, we were waiting for Pacino outside the Criminal Courts building in downtown New York. Shooting was to start at 8 o'clock in the morning. 10 a.m., still no Al. We panicked and called his apartment. We called his agent. We called every number we could think of, including the teamster assigned to drive him. There were no cell phones then, and we couldn't reach anybody. We worried that something happened to Al or that he'd quit without telling us. At about 10:30, 2.5 hours late, his car and driver pulled up, and Al stepped out, accompanied by his personal makeup man. Al was all smiles, and as though nothing was wrong, he gave me a hug and a high five. I was furious, but he was disarming, so I choked back my anger and introduced him to the crew. "What are we doing today, Billy?" he asked. He had no idea what was scheduled on the first day, or most days thereafter. As I walked him to the makeup trailer, I said, "Al, what happened? Why are you late?" His expression turned dark. "Geez, I didn't know," he trailed off. He seemed hurt. His makeup man took me aside and whispered, "He always does this. If you want him on the set at 8, give him a 6 o'clock call, or even earlier. It's known as a Pacino call." That's what we had to do for the rest of the shoot. I can't remember one day that he came to the set knowing his lines. He'd look at the pages just before the set was lit and camera ready. Then he'd need a number of takes to get the lines right. He called it spontaneity, which I love, but spontaneity comes from preparation, which gives an actor the freedom to create. The other actors were always ready and had to endure while their best takes were wasted until Al was ready to move on. Often, I thought, he'd hit the right note, and I'd say, "Great, let's go to the next shot," and he'd invariably hold up an index finger or whisper, "One more." And sometimes it would be 5 more, or 10 or 20 more. Despite the Pacino call, Al continued to arrive late and unprepared. As the takes piled up, my uncertainty over his performance affected my own attitude. Everyone on a film set has anxiety over his or her work, but when the director does, it can rock the foundations. Al and I grew distant. We pressed on with a sense that it could explode at any time. Weintraub was supportive as always, but I was disappointed with Al's performance. I remember the same feeling about Hackman during the filming of The French Connection, and I was hoping we could make Al's performance work in the cutting room. We shot a scene where Burns, Pacino's character, confronts Gregory, played by James Remar, the roommate of his next-door neighbor, Ted, played by Don Scardino. Gregory views Burns as a rival for Ted's affections, and the scene becomes heated. A threat of violence hung in the air, and Pacino suddenly exploded to life. For a scene lasting only a few minutes, I could see a flash of his powerful charisma as an actor. It sprinkled over a few other moments in the film as well. In the cutting room, it occurred to me that as the killer and the victims were all dressed in leather caps, jackets, and Levi's, black leather boots, and dark sunglasses, there might be multiple killers. All the actual Cuppy murders had not been solved. It would be interesting to suggest in the film that there was a killer still at large at the end, and that it might be Burns, played by Pacino. When I had an approved version, I ran it for Pacino. Bud Smith, the editor, was there with me. I thought the film was powerful, but I knew it would receive as much scorn as praise. When the screening was over, Al was slow to get out of his seat. and when he turned to Bud and me, his expression was unhappy. "We got a lot of work to do, guys," he said gravely. "What do you mean, Al?" I could see his anger and disappointment. "I mean, I don't get it, Billy. It doesn't work," he said quietly. "I disagree, Al." "Well, we're going to have to try and fix it," he said. "Like how?" I started to feel anger myself. "We have to go into the cutting room and start over," he said. "Give me some idea of what you have in mind, Al." "Well, I take out some of the early scenes, the arm, the pickup in the bar, the murder in the hotel," he offered. "Where would you start the film?" His answer was, "When you first see me, when I come into Sorvino's office. But I'd make other cuts." "Like what?" I asked. "The murders should all be off camera, and you're suggesting that my character is one of the killers." "That's right," I said firmly. "Why didn't you tell me?" he shouted. "I honestly didn't discover it until I got into the cutting room." He started to pace as his anger built. "I would have played the part differently if I'd known." His voice trailed off. "I didn't want you to play it differently," I said, raising my voice. But I could see his point. As a serious actor, he didn't want information kept from him by his director. Had I discovered this twist during production, I would have told him. For me, it was a late discovery. For him, a betrayal. Bud Smith didn't say anything, but his face reddened. I stood up. "Al, let me tell you something. I like the film. I have final cut. There's no way I'm going into the cutting room with you. Is that clear?" I doubt he'd ever been talked to in this way, but the gloves were off. Weintraub, Merv Adelson, and Al's agents all tried to calm him down, but he wasn't having it. He did no publicity for the film, no interviews, a public silence he's maintained to this day. Word, of course, got out that he hated the film, and this was used to fire the resentment felt by many others.